Hey guys, welcome back to my channel. This is part 2 of the My Extraordinary Life series, and if you haven't seen it, please go back and watch the first video. If you're just joining me now, my name is Scarlett. Welcome to my world. I have lived a most extraordinary life. The first video takes us through a more chronological look at my childhood, growing up in New York City, living where I live now and why. I'm in Western Pennsylvania. I work at my best friend's witch shop, so if you're into witchy stuff, definitely hang out. It goes through my years in art school, living in Manhattan, growing up in Turkish nightclubs with my father, who was a Turkish folk musician, and then how that kind of all led me to exploring my own time on the stage with burlesque. And then how I transitioned from burlesque into becoming a tattoo artist. Then how I got out of a 14-year-long relationship and hightailed it 3,000 miles west to California all by myself. My Aquarian analytical air sign brain really wants to keep going forward with all of this chronology, but I recently have had reason to sell my father's accordion. And another part of my journey that I haven't delved into yet is that I'm planning another 3,000-mile move to be with my love in Scotland. Yes, you heard that right. If you are into Scotland content, hang out. My life is going to lead me in a direction where there's a lot more beautiful, breathtaking content of Scotland coming. I really wanted to zero in on my father's life as a musician and what an extraordinary experience it was to be on the ride with him for it. My father passed away around the year 2000, so I was lucky enough to have him up until my early 20s. He was an extraordinary man and quite a mystery to me. I mean, who really knows their parents truly? You know what I mean? The extraordinary life that I'm trying to tell you guys about, that I've lived so far, and I'm only 47, I can't even imagine what he lived through. He came here in the early 60s from Turkey. He was a self-taught musician, and I wish I knew more about his childhood in Turkey. I wish I knew when he picked up his first instrument, what that instrument was, because he played multiple things. He played the saz, he played the accordion. I have photographs of him playing flamenco guitar, and he sang, and he had a beautiful voice. He really was a brilliant mind, because, you know, you can either do math or you can either do art. And my father could do it all. He was, I think, a typical Taurus. He was very analytical, very grounded, very stubborn. He was born in the 40s, and his parents, being more of a traditional Turkish family, did not envision him pursuing his art professionally. So they pushed him to go into finance. At least this is what he told me. He was good at it. He was always good at numbers. I lived in a separated household. My parents were excellent co-parents, but they were not excellent life partners together. So when they found out that they were pregnant with me, they decided to co-parent, but separately. So I lived with my mom full-time in Queens, and my dad would come over every Thursday for dinner and check my homework, and that gave me so much anxiety. But then he would take me on the weekends to his place in the city. That is where I really got to experience New York City, you know, transitioning from the late 70s. I was born in 76, so I remember what the subways felt like, covered in graffiti and people smoking everywhere, and it was really gritty. And I would spend Saturday to Sunday with him. Every Saturday night, he would take me to Fazıl's nightclub, which is where he was a band leader in a Turkish folk band. The experience has just captured my filmmaker mind because there are so many visuals in it. And Drew Barrymore, if you're listening, listen, honey, we need to get together and produce my life story as a movie, because this part alone, this part of my childhood alone is just iconic. Now, one other part of the painting that I really need to flesh out for you is this other layer of the visual story and the historic aspect of New York City that I was exposed to. My father lived in a hotel. I partially grew up in a hotel. So when I watch the Grand Budapest, I get flooded with so many memories because it had that similar, it was built around 1905, and the style of the building is that classic Beaux-Arts architectural style that you see all over the Upper West Side. This place, in its golden era heyday, hosted dignitaries and celebrities. I heard it was even the place where President Roosevelt stayed when he came to New York City. So there was this whole beautiful history of the place. And I think sometime in the 70s, it was turned into an artist's residence. And that was when my father got his first studio apartment in that building. And it was incredible because it had these long hallways like The Shining. It spanned from 85th to 86th Street on Broadway. You would be walking down the hallway from one end to the other to get to the elevator, and you would hear opera singers practicing their arias, or a tuba player, or a rock and roll guitar, or somebody playing a flute, practicing their scales. It was an extraordinary place to grow up, and that building captures my imagination to this day. So anyway, we would pack all of his gear. I remember getting his amp. He had a Fender amp, and the accordion would go into the big box, and we would get dressed. We would hail a yellow cab, pile into the yellow cab, and then head downtown to 8th Avenue, and I think it was 46th Street. So this was on the outskirts, on just the very edges of that Times Square area. So I remember when Times Square, 40 Deuce, that whole area was very smutty and very sketchy. I remember seeing all the big marquees with XXX on them, and you wouldn't think that this was a very wholesome environment to bring a child into, but really it was a family environment. It was run by all these fellow Turkish immigrants that came together and created this beautiful scene. The owner of the club, Fazıl Cengiz, you can never forget him because he just looks like the typical Turkish man on the mountain with the big silver beard and then the long ponytail. I believe he owned the entire building. It was this old tenement building right on 8th Avenue. By day, it functioned as rehearsal studios. And this place was iconic. When they had to let go of their lease and they demolished the building, the New York Times wrote a whole article about it. It lives in so many performers' stories, this building and this place and Fazıl. It's really fascinating. So he had these rehearsal studios where, belly dance classes, flamenco dancers would be stomping on the ceiling sometimes if you were in a lower studio. Actors and actresses would rent rooms to rehearse their scenes. And at night, for one night on the weekends, it would turn into this sort of after-hours social club type of place. Now, understand that there was a period in New York City history where a lot of these clubs did exist and they were unregulated, but I'm sure, they had their friends that they were, When the Happy Land fire occurred, and for those of you who aren't up on your New York City history, Happy Land was a social club up in the Bronx. There was a massive fire, and because it wasn't regulated with fire exits and things like that, a lot of people died because they were trapped in this space. So I have a feeling that really kind of brought about the end. From what I remember of this place, it felt like you were inside of a beautiful harem-like tent with billowing fabric, swathing the ceilings, and tinsel and festive ribbon. This was where I spent New Year's Eve almost every year as a kid for several years. There was the band, and my father was considered the band leader. He had his accordion, and he always sat in the middle, and there was always, a saz player and an oud player, maybe a flute player. If some of you know Omar Faruk Tekbilek, I remember him as Faruk. I remember meeting him as a child and hearing him play, and I'm pretty sure that Fozzles is where he got discovered, and now he's like, you know, a world-class touring musician. And there were belly dancers. That part of the whole scene is really what captured me as a child. It was just the costumes and the beautiful colors and the chiffon and the beads and the shimmying and the beautiful movements and, you know, just how hypnotic it all was. After the belly dancer, you know, exited and went to the changing room, my job was to get down on the floor of the dance floor and scoop up all of the singles, because you always have somebody who comes, you know, they always welcome people to come up and do like a little dance with them and tuck dollars into their belt or, you know, the side of their bra or wherever. Sometimes somebody would come up and make it rain. It was my job to scoop up all of the tips and then to go to the kitchen and fill up a big pint glass of cold water and to bring the dancer her money and her water. Movie scene time now. You would walk in and it was just this tiny little almost closet of a room with a mirror, and the mirror was all fogged up because she's sweating. And I just remember her, you know, seeing her reflection in the mirror and she's trying to catch her breath and she's glistening with sweat. And her makeup looks, you know, even more larger than life up close. And it's just the smell of perspiration and exotic perfume. I would put down the money and the pint of water, and I would get my cheeks pinched because I was just so cute. I was like the cutest little, you know, stagehand ever. The club would empty out at 3 or 4 in the morning, and the musicians would be packing up all their gear. Sometimes I would fall asleep on the pile of coats that was in the back room that was technically Fozzle's bedroom. The musicians would be waiting around to get paid, and then we would load out. We would get into the cab, head back up to my father's place, and so many times I remember seeing the sun rising. I remember seeing the sky getting lighter on Broadway. You know, what kid can say I was out till all hours and I saw the sun come up? And we would go home and we'd pass out, and we'd usually wake up around 2 or 3 in the afternoon. No joke, because sometimes we wouldn't get home until like 5, maybe 4 or 5. And we would go right downstairs to the Greasy Spoon Greek Diner on the corner and get breakfast. Eggs and rye toast and coffee. Well, that's what my dad would get. Those were my weekends as a child. It will forever live in my heart, and God, I want to immortalize this on film. Drew, are you listening? Come on, let's get together. You could play me. We're like the same age. All this dust is getting kicked up now because I'm selling my dad's accordion. When you open the case, you can kind of get that waft of a little bit of smoke. He was a cigarette smoker, so I gotta rub some lemon oil on that for its next owner. It's a massive instrument. I had to put it on and just to make sure everything was in working order, so I had to find some YouTube videos to learn the basics. This thing is so heavy. And listen, even if I was terribly attached to it, I couldn't play this specific accordion if I had any interest in pursuing the accordion. I have a very short torso. I'm 5'3", and this is where my waist is. So this accordion goes from here to here. It's too big for me to just wrap my eyes around to see the keyboard. So if I ever did want to, I would just get something that fits my body a little bit better. I'll always keep his saz though. His saz means the world to me, and that one will stay with me forever. And that's something that I almost feel like I would love to learn how to restring and play. My uncle Mehmet, who was my father's best friend and who was at the club every weekend and played on stage with him every weekend, and I would see him at the house every week. He's closer to me than some of my own blood family, because a lot of my blood family was, you know, still in Turkey or in other states or other parts of the country. When my father passed away, I know it made him very sad, and he stopped playing music. And I had the gift quite a few years ago of hosting him where I was living in California, and I got him to play the saz.
your father used to love this song.
Yeah.
Really, yes.
I remember it. What's it called?
Shut the lights off.
Really?
Yes.
How do you say it in Turkish?
Lambaya püfte, but blow it up.
Lambaya püfte?
Yeah, blow the candles off.
Püfte.
Yeah,
I love
püfte.
that. Püfte.
Okay, let's play something else. I really don't understand how come this so bad boy. Your mother.
That meant so much to me, to just have my father's instrument brought to life again, but to also kind of see him come to life again a little bit too. I think both of us found a lot of healing in that moment. So this is part of my extraordinary life, you guys. I know I went down a little bit more of a rabbit hole with my father, and I will have to tell you guys the story of my mom as well, because she deserves some screen time. She was something else. New York woman, half Filipina beauty, one of a kind, and gone too soon. She passed away when I was 10. I almost feel like the experience of learning about the impermanence of life at such a young age really taught me to grab life by the cojones and go for it. You never know what day is going to be your last. My philosophy has always been to not leave any stone unturned, to always follow the breadcrumb trail. The universe is always sending you signs and always trying to lead you in certain directions, and you're always meant to go in those directions, because if you don't open one door, you'll never see the 100 other doors that's on the other side of that, right? It's really given me my lust for life and my lust for wanting to pursue anything and everything that lights me up and inspires me. I always say, you'll never know unless you try. And you really don't want to live with the regret of what if. I never want to live with what if. I don't believe in mistakes. I only believe in life experience and life lessons, and this is how we find ourselves. This is how we discover ourselves and where we're supposed to be in life. Thank you guys so much for joining me. Please like, subscribe, share, hang out, because there is so much more to the story of my extraordinary life, and I've only just gotten started. This is only video number 2. So I'll see you next time. Thanks for watching.